Hello and welcome to the Monument Designer video tutorial. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use the Monument Designer interface, and we are going to go through the steps and process of building a monument ourselves. I'll go ahead and log in by typing in my username and password. And on this first screen, I see all of our previously created and saved designs. So if I wanted to open up any of these to continue working on them or review them, I would just click on the name. And I'm going to open up the tutorial design right here. Now, what you're seeing here is a finished design. And I'm showing this to you because this is actually what we'll be building throughout the course of this video. Now, if you're familiar with the Design Mart product catalog, which is full of fantastic monument designs, this one is actually based on a monument from the Ties That Bind collection. And one of the things I'll be showing you is how to use these pre-built designs as a starting point for your own designs. Alright, let's get started. So I'm going to create a new design by going to the top right, where I'll click on Designs and New Design. First, let's talk about the canvas. So the canvas is this big section in the middle, and this is where our design will actually live. So anything that we add to our monument design will appear in the canvas. So how do we get things onto the canvas? If you look on the far left, there's an Add to Canvas section, and you'll see we can add things like text, bases, components. Everything that we'll want to add to our monument design can be found in the Add to Canvas section. Now, if you'll remember, in our example image, I said that that monument was actually based on a design from the Ties That Bind collection. And you can view pre-built designs by clicking on Pre-Built Monuments. And you'll notice we have several collections here: Closer Walk, Precious Memories, Journeys Remembered, and a little folder icon that tells you how many items are in each collection. So if I look at Ties That Bind right here, I see there are 64 different pre-built monuments inside Ties That Bind. So when I click on that, I can see them. I can scroll through and look at these different designs. If I'd like to see them a little bigger, at the bottom left you see the Resize Grid series of buttons. These numbers pertain to how many designs they'll show you per row. So if I click on one, we're just going to see one monument design per row, and so they're a little bigger, easier to see. Likewise, you can make them smaller if you're trying to see more at once. I'll change it back to 2. I'll put it on 1. And the one that we used is right here, D867A. If I click on the eye at the top right, it'll make it even bigger and show me a list of tags or terms that are associated with this design. Now we can use these to filter and see similar items, but I'll show you more about that later. So if this is something I wanted to add to the canvas, I just click and drag and drop it on the canvas. Now it looks a little small, so if I want to zoom in, I can actually use the tools at the bottom left of the canvas to do that. So right now we have the Select tool selected, and that allows me to click on things on the canvas to select them. If I choose the Pan tool and I click and drag on the canvas, I can move it around. And then if I select the Zoom tool, I can click to zoom in to different parts of the canvas. I can also use this bar to zoom out or in more quickly. Or if I click and drag to draw a box around any part of the canvas, when I let go, it will zoom in to that part of the canvas. Alright, now that we're zoomed in, I'll go ahead and reselect my Select tool. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about layers. So when we added this monument to the canvas, it appeared on the canvas, but we also had several things appear in our layers list at the bottom right. So you'll see here underneath layers, each one of these rows corresponds to an item on the canvas. So right now our base is selected, but if I click on the monument itself, you'll see it selects the monument layer. Likewise, if I click on one of these components, it'll select the corresponding component. So, what can we actually do with these? Well, the layers helps us organize things on our canvas. It also allows us to perform a number of helpful functions, like hiding certain parts, duplicating them, and if I select this one, and I don't actually want it on there, I can click the trash can to delete it. You may have also noticed while we were selecting different parts of our design that the editor at the top right was also changing. So whenever you have something selected, the editor will show us what we can do to manipulate it or change it. So for instance, I have this floral component selected, and I can click flip horizontal or flip vertical, and I can actually change that around. Or if I select the monument itself, you'll see I can flip it as well, or I can change its color scheme. So right now we're on gray, but I can make it black, or any of the other available colors. Now, besides using the editor to change things, I can also change things by selecting them, and at the top right I can click and drag to rotate. I can click and drag in the middle of an item to move it around. You can move any of them around. So I could move these panels wherever I wanted and just make a general mess of the design if I really wanted to. You can resize things by clicking and dragging from the bottom right. That brings me to my next point of, okay, how do we get this back to a point where it doesn't look like a huge mess? So at the bottom right, you'll see there is an undo button and a redo button. So every time I click undo, it will step back one time, which is incredibly helpful. So I'll just keep clicking undo until I get back to where I was, which that looks about right. And hopefully this gives you a little introduction into the tools that we'll be using to add things to the canvas, organize them using the layers list, and then modify them using the editor. So we've got our pre-built here, but I said we were going to build one from scratch. So why don't we go ahead and do that using these new skills. So what I'll do is first I'm going to click delete on each of these layers to remove them from the canvas. And I'll move back over to our add to canvas section. I can close this pre-built slide out by clicking the minus. And let's get started. We're going to build our monument one piece at a time. So let's start by grabbing a blank. We'll start with the monument itself. And I'm looking for a double upright. And you see they come in a variety of sizes and dimensions. And I'm going to grab this guy, drag it on, drop it onto the canvas. Next, if I move my mouse over here, you'll see it slides over, so I don't have to close it to go to the next section. I'll click on bases, and I want a monument base. And again, we get different sizes and dimensions. And I'll grab this one and drop it on the canvas and position it. Now you'll notice the base is on top of the monument, which is not ideal. So if you look at our layers list, that last icon over here, the one we didn't use before, if I click and drag, I can reorder my layers. So everything that's at the top of the layer list will actually be on top of the design. So now our monument, which is the topmost layer, is on top of the base. I'll position these. I'm just clicking and dragging. Alright, so we got our monument, We got our base. I'll look over here. Next, why don't we add those floral components? So I'll click on Components. And here we see a list of all of the component categories that we can choose from. I can scroll through here and look at the different ones. If I resize the grid by clicking on, say, the 2, I can see more at one time. You see we've got faith, floral, hands, hobbies, and leisure. There are all sorts of great components here from the Design Mart catalog to choose from. So really any occasion you need a component for, you can find it here. So you can see we've got 409 emblems, 241 classic components. It would take a long time to just click through all of these categories to try and find what we're looking for. So I'm looking for a corner piece for a monument. So if I click on the magnifying glass right here at the top, it'll open our search and I can type in corner. And as I do that, it's filtering our component categories. So now I see there's 5 classic components that are corner pieces, 1 in faith, and 62 in floral. So I'll go ahead and click on floral. And here I'm seeing all of the floral component pieces. I can scroll through. If I get to the bottom and I want to see some more, I'll click on Next to go to the second page. Keep going through until I find what I'm looking for. And I kind of like this one. So I just click and drag and add it to my canvas. And now it's part of our design. I can click and drag to move it around. And if I click and drag at the bottom right, where my cursor changes, I can resize it and maybe make it a little bigger. There we go. One thing I'd like to point out is the usefulness of tags before we move on. So if we look in our Add to Canvas grid, and I click on the eye to get information about that component we just added, I can see its tags, which, if you'll remember, we saw when we added a pre-built at the beginning. And these just describe this item. And I can use these to find similar items. So you'll notice it's tagged with corner, and corner is what we searched when we found it. So if I want, maybe I wanted to find everything in the components that is tagged with grape. When I click on that, it types grape for us in the search and filters it just as it did with corner. So now all of these categories, say I clicked on classic components, are going to show us results that include grapes in the design. So you can see here, grapes. So this is an easy way to find similar components when you're working on design with a theme. If I want to clear the search and see everything again, I just click the X. And that's it. That is how you can take advantage of tags. Alright, let's keep going through our design. I'm going to go ahead and close our components here. We're done with that. And I'd like this component to be the same, but on the other side of the monument. So in my layers, I'll just click Duplicate Layer. It creates a copy of it, which I can then drag over and position. And then I simply flip it in our editor here by clicking Flip Horizontal and position it. Now sometimes it can be hard to line things up just the way you want. At the bottom right underneath the canvas, you'll see Show Grid. When I click on that, we get a helpful line grid that lets us tweak and fine-tune the alignment and positioning of our elements. There we go, looks pretty good. Now before we do anything else, it's always a good idea to save your work. So to do that, I'm going to go up to the top where it says Untitled Design and give this design a name. I'll call it Monument Designer Tutorial. You can name it whatever you want. And then at the top left, I'll go to File Actions and click Save. We get the message confirming it's been saved, which I can close by clicking the X at the top right. And now our design is safe and sound, and we can come back to it and work on it at any time. So if I go to Designs at the top right and I go to Your Designs, you'll remember this is the first screen we saw when we first logged in, and there's Monument Designer Tutorial right there. So when I click on that, it pulls it up and we can keep going. Always remember to save your work. Next, let's go ahead and add our panels. So I'll go back over to the Add to Canvas section and I'll click on Components. And what I'm looking for were those double-lined panels. So I'm just going to type in double, just like we did with corner earlier, and click on Panels. And I can scroll through, and I see here a series of double-lined panels. And I'll grab one of these, drag it onto the canvas, and drop it on. So there's our long one. And then we had two thicker ones underneath. That might be too big, but I can resize it. And then I could drag another one on, but since I already edited this one, I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate it to make sure it's the same size. And I can drag that one down here and place it on the other side. Alright, there we go. We've got our panels. Now, they don't look quite right to me, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on the grid and position these to be a little closer to even and center. Okay, there we go. That lines up pretty nicely. That one might be, yep, there we go. Alright, I'll turn off the grid. And there we go, much better. And just like that, we've used Monument Designer to recreate from scratch the pre-built monument design we saw at the beginning of the video from the Ties That Bind collection. Alright, let's go ahead and add some text. I'll close our components and click Add Text. When I do that, it adds text to the top left of the canvas, which I can drag and place just like anything else. And you'll notice at the top right in the editor, because we have the text selected, we can edit the text. So I'll highlight this here and replace it with family name. And then just to the right of the Content tab, I can click on Style. And this will allow me to change the way the text appears. So I can make it sunken, frosted even, increase the font size, and you can do a number of other helpful things like change the line height, the letter spacing, change the text color, and even select from a number of popular fonts. You can apply effects like skewing it, and you can even arc your text. So there's a number of interesting things you can do to get your design just the way you want it. Alright, let's add some text to our lower panels here. So again, I'll go to the top left, click on Add Text. Here's our new text, which I will drag and position. And this one I actually want to be center aligned. So in the editor, I'll go Text Align, change that to center, and position it. And this way, when we type in the Content tab here, our text will stay center aligned. Alright, I'll type what I want to be here. Day and year, and month, day, and year. Alright, so we've got that entered, and I'll click on Style. I'll make this sunken as well, and I'm going to change the line height to increase it just a little bit. There we go. Okay, I kind of like that. Now we've got that on here, and we could just redo that whole thing, for the right panel, but if we go down into the layer list, just like we did earlier with the floral component, I'll duplicate our text layer here, and that way we don't have to retype anything, restyle anything. We just move it right over and position it where it goes. Family name needs to come up a little bit. There we go. All right, and there we go. We've added text to our monument. All right, we're getting pretty close. Let's go ahead and add some vases. Now, right now, our base is not really wide enough to accommodate vases. So if I click on the base, you'll see we have this arrow on the far right. I can click and drag to lengthen it. And I'll just move this back over. There we go. Maybe a little more. There we go. All right, that should do it. We'll get our vases from the left side. I'll click on vases. We have several different categories here. I'll pick turned with a polished finish. And just grab this first one here, drag it over, and drop it into our design. And just like we did with the text, I'm going to duplicate that vase layer over here and place that one on the other side. Nice. All right. Now, if you want to refine your presentation a little more, I can go over here and click on vases again to go back, and I'll click on flower arrangements, and I can add flower arrangements and position them with our vases just to make it look a little nicer. And there we go. Now, I've always been a fan of darker monuments, so I actually want to change the granite color for some of our items here. So I've got this vase selected, and I'll click on black to change it. I'll do the same with the other. Now I'll click on our monument, change that to black, and I'll do the same for our base. Now, something else you can do with bases and monuments is see their dimensions here. So when I click on the Dimensions tab in the editor, I see its length. I can set its width and thickness. I can change what type of edging I want. So if I don't want a classic rock pitch, I could do sawn or polished. I'll change it back to rock pitch. I like that. And I can even give it a margin if I want. Likewise, if I click on the monument itself, go to the Dimensions tab, I can set the thickness for that monument, change what type of edge it uses, and even change the top separately if I wanted to. Monument Designer also comes with built-in price estimation. So if I go to the top left and click on File Actions, I can put a check in the Estimate Price box. Now, underneath the canvas, you'll see it says Estimated Price, Cannot Price Incomplete Design. Okay, well, why is that? Well, in order for Monument Designer to estimate a price, it needs to know some information about the monument. And if I look in my layer list, I can see where we're missing some information. I see our monument layer here has this red warning box on it. And when I move my mouse over that red warning box, it tells me it's missing a thickness. So when I click on that, it'll select the monument and take us to its Dimensions tab. So now I can see thickness, no depth selected, but that's easily fixed. So I'll give it a thickness, and now we'll see the estimated price is displaying. Now you'll notice when we turned on Estimate Price, it also added a discount percentage field. So each item in your design, you can give it a discount on a per design basis. So this won't apply to all your designs, it'll only apply to this one we're currently working on. So if you want to give a customer a discount on, say the base or on your vases, you can apply that discount on a per item per design basis. Very helpful. I think our monument is just about finished. The last thing I want to add to it is a custom image. So if I go to the top left and I click on File Actions, I can import an image from my computer to use in the design. I'll click Browse. I can select an image from my computer, click Open, and Add. It'll place it on the canvas, and once it's here, I can move it around and place it just like anything else. At the bottom right, I can resize it. Now you'll notice when you resize images, you can stretch them. It'll allow you to do that, but if you want it to stay the same aspect ratio, just hold down Shift, and that way when you're resizing it, it won't get distorted. I'll make it the size I want and then place it. In addition to adding your own custom images, Monument Designer comes with some built-in images to use as backgrounds. So if I move over to the left and click on Backgrounds, you'll see we have several images that we can choose from, and if I click on one, it sets it as the background. Now our monument is pretty huge on here. So what I'll do is I'll use the zoom tool to zoom out, get it the size I want, and then I can use pan to move it. Okay, there we go. Now I'll change back to my select tool because I noticed that our image got a little moved around. There we go. Alright, we have created a presentation-ready custom monument design from scratch. So what can we do with it now? If you look at the top left, we can export it, which means save it to our computer, in a number of different formats. So I can save it as a PNG if I just want an image of it, or if I'm sending it to, say, a printer, I can save it in the Gerber PDF format or a DXF. I also have those same options available to email it directly from Monument Designer. So if I wanted to email a mock-up or a proof to a customer, I could click PNG file, put in their email address, who it's coming from, and even add a personalized message. And it will attach this design to the email for them to see. As always, it's important to remember to save your designs. So I'll go to File Actions and Save, just to make sure we don't lose anything. And that's it. And even after all that, we've barely scratched the surface of what Monument Designer can do. It is truly a powerful tool, and I hope that this tutorial video has instilled you with some confidence to dive in and start creating your own designs today. Thank you for watching.